Britain will provide Ukraine with ballistic missiles. What kind of missile is it? What is known about it? When will we receive it? When will we hit Moscow with it? What is it actually capable of? But most importantly, where are our Flamingo, Sapsan, and the brand new ballistic missiles with an 800-kilometer range, which we were promised would be demonstrated in action by the end of 2025? That's what today's episode is about, friends. So please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and don't forget to leave comments. This is very important for the growth of our community. Thank you to each and every one of you for that. And so you don't waste any time. Let's get started right away. And we'll start with this. On January 11th, the British government announced the launch of a very ambitious project to create a powerful ballistic missile specifically for Ukraine. It was named Nightfall. In English, this translates as nightfall, like the onset of dusk, or simply twilight. Very symbolic, friends, wouldn't you agree? Especially for Moscow. What does this mean in practice? Britain is launching a competition among its defense companies. The requirements are as follows. They need to create a mobile ground-launched missile with a range of over 500 kilometers, capable of carrying a 200-kilogram warhead. The missile must be cheap, mass-produced, and highly accurate. The main goal is to provide Ukraine with weapons to strike deep into Russian military formations. Right now, we lack this capability. As you know, we use drones and sometimes missiles when the opportunity arises. At the moment, we are in dire need of ballistic missiles. But there is one very important nuance. This is just the beginning of development because in December 2025, a tender was announced. In February 2026, that's the deadline for applications. So only next month will be the deadline for applications, and contracts will likely be signed in March, if we're lucky. Then there's a year to create the first test samples. So it's not all that fast. So friends, when will we get these missiles? Even in the most optimistic scenario, not before the end of 2027. That's a long time, you have to agree. It's not tomorrow and not even the day after tomorrow. This is a strategic investment in our ability to fight in the future. Also, by the way, it's interesting that initially in the first plans, which by the way were in August, in the summer of the previous 25th year, the missile was supposed to be more powerful. A range of 600 kilometers and a 300-kilogram warhead. Why these parameters were reduced and changed is still completely unknown. Perhaps, I think it was to cut costs and speed up development because there's no time to waste. And honestly, that's the right approach. The main advantage of the Nightfall missile is its potential for mass production, since they plan to manufacture up to 10 missiles per month. But friends, for comparison, according to our intelligence, the Russian Federation produces about 60 Iskander missiles per month. So if we get ballistic missiles from the UK, that will be 10 missiles per month in 2027. Russia is already producing 60 now. I'm sure that, unfortunately, if this war doesn't end, by 2027, Russia will be producing twice as many Iskanders as you can imagine. So, to match them in numbers, to do that, we need several such projects from different countries. So, Nightfall is important and good news, but it's a weapon for the day after tomorrow. For now, it's just on paper, friends, while the war is happening today. That's why a completely logical and natural question arises. What about our own developments? Because we've been hearing about Ukrainian ballistic missiles for more than a year now, right? That's true. And here there are two stories, the state one and the private one. Let's separate them now. The first is the state project Sapsan, also known as Hrim. They've been talking about it for almost 20 years, for as long as I can remember. And it was supposed to be our equivalent of the Iskander, basically. A range of up to 500 kilometers, a speed of 2,500 kilometers per hour, and a powerful warhead. By the way, in August 2024, there were reports of successful tests, and in the summer of 2025, rumors were confirmed, so to speak, about the start of serial production. In December 2025, President Zelensky again mentioned the beginning of the use of Ukrainian ballistic missiles, but there were no details, photos, serial samples, or large-scale deployment. Unfortunately, we still haven't seen any of that. And this actually raises a lot of questions. Where are these missiles? Why haven't they been seen at the front? Why aren't we using them? Why is it that when Moscow strikes Kyiv, but Kyiv can't strike Moscow with ballistic missiles? Do you understand? All these questions come up for us. So this lack of communication, this absence of communication is honestly very frustrating. And the second story I told you about, friends, is the private sector, right? Firepoint, that same company, and the FP7, FP9 missiles, FP7, FP9. Here, the situation is somewhat more transparent and perhaps somewhat more optimistic, but still worth mentioning because in the fall, of 25 fire point. It's known for its Flamingo drones, just to help you get your bearings, and it publicly presented 2 ballistic missiles. Here they are in the screenshot on your screens, friends. The first is the FP7 with a range of up to 200 kilometers and a 150 kilogram warhead. And this weapon, so to speak, is meant for the frontline zone, let's say for enemy headquarters, depots, and so on. The FP9 is more serious, more interesting. It has a range of 800 to 855 kilometers, which already puts it in the category of strategic weapons. Such a missile can reach not only Kursk or Belgorod, but much, much farther, friends. The manufacturer stated that the FP7, the first and smaller missile, could enter service as early as the new year, in 2025, and the FP9 by June 2026. As of mid-January 2026, there is no official confirmation that the missiles have been adopted into service. I have not seen this publicly, nor have I found this information, but the very fact, the presentation of these working prototypes by a private company is honestly a giant step forward. Now we need results. Why is this actually great news? Despite, I understand, all the pessimism, friends, that viewers might be feeling right now, these rockets are made with modern technologies. That's true because composite materials are lighter, stronger, modern, solid fuel, high precision, even without GPS, and importantly, potentially low cost, and the ability to quickly scale up production. In other words, it's important for us that there are many of them and that they are produced quickly, right? The only problem is that we are constantly being fed these announcements, unfortunately. That's why people are somewhat disappointed in this regard. Because we can talk as much as we want and show as many slides as we want to. Of course, we all hope that these missiles will appear as soon as possible, but unfortunately, so far, we haven't seen any tangible results in the form of, let's say, explosions on Russian territory. You know what I mean. However, if the manufacturer's statements turn out to be true, then already in this year, 2026, we will be able to receive our own serially produced ballistic missiles. Friends, that's a year or even 2 earlier than the British Nightfall. You have to agree. So, let's suppose that the Ukrainian FPD9 or the British Nightfall appear in our armed forces. What happens next? What will they change? A lot, actually. First, it's about strategic deterrence and strikes on logistics. A missile with a range of 500 to 800 kilometers, my friends, is not just another shell. It's the key to military logistics. Fuel depots, ammunition, storage tanks deep in the rear, Bryansk, Voronezh, Rostov. It's the ability to reach Moscow. Critical infrastructure, including bridges and railway hubs through which all supplies are transported. At this point, all Russian air defense facilities immediately become the focus of attention. Those same S-400s that are stationed far from the front and protect the skies over Russia's rear cities. This will force the command of the Russian Federation to pull back their systems, logistics, and headquarters farther and farther from the border, which will complicate their operations. The second is the symbolic and psychological significance of Moscow. Again, the most common question is, will they reach Moscow? Well, let's do the math. From the Ukrainian border in the Bryansk region to Moscow is about 400 kilometers. From the Sumy region, it's about 500 to 550 kilometers. The FP9 has a declared range of 855 kilometers, and even the Neptune, its range is 500 kilometers. So it's entirely possible. It's technically realistic. But the main question is, will Russian air defense be able to shoot them down? Experts, including our own specialists, tend to believe that it will be extremely difficult for them because Russian systems, even the modern S-400 and S-500, are based one way or another on old Soviet designs intended for aerodynamic targets, aircraft, cruise missiles, and so on. A ballistic missile flies several times faster, 5 to 7 times faster than something like the Storm Shadow, and along a steep trajectory. Experience has already shown that even the American ATACMS, which I remind everyone have a range of 300 kilometers, are intercepted by Russian air defense with enormous difficulty, and at first they could not intercept them at all. And what can we say about the latest missiles created with all modern threats and conditions in mind? That's why, friends, the appearance of this mass-produced ballistic weapon with a range of over 500 kilometers is a game changer. It's not just about being able to strike the enemy's logistics. This is a tool of strategic deterrence when the Kremlin knows that key targets at a distance of 500 kilometers and even more are at risk. Their calculated matrix will change dramatically. You have to agree. So in that case, let's quickly sum things up. Nightfall is an important and long-awaited step, a step by our allies in the right direction. But unfortunately, it's a weapon. For 2027 to 2028, just waiting for it, sitting idly by, well, you understand, that's not our way because the war is ongoing. The second point is Ukrainian ballistics. This isn't science fiction. These are real projects that already exist in metal. A private initiative, Firepoint, could give us the first medium-range samples as early as this year. In 2026, at least that's what we're hoping for. We're just hoping, right? The state project Sapsan is a super cool story, but so far it lacks transparency and pace. What will this give us? Is massive long-range ballistics the key to victory in a war of attrition? Is it the ability to systematically destroy the enemy's logistics, headquarters, and infrastructure? Will they reach Moscow? Technically, yes, as I already said. In practice, the main targets will be military facilities, but the very possibility of such a strike will radically change the perception of security. In the Kremlin, what do you think, my dear friends? How soon will we see Ukrainian ballistic missiles? Which targets do you think are the most important for them? Please write your thoughts in the comments below this video. I'm really looking forward to reading them. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for hitting like and subscribing. It's very important for the growth of the community. Please take care of yourself and see you next time.